As you can tell, it's about 9 o'clock outside and the sun's still up. All the lights are coming on, but the sun's still out. In this video, we're going to be talking about Antonio Espejo. I thought I did an introduction already, but I can't find it, so I'm redoing it. This is a pretty fun topic for me. There's a lot to go on to. I'm pretty sure that there'll be at least be one or maybe even two videos after this coming up. I'll be going up tomorrow. No, tomorrow's Wednesday. The next day after that is Thursday. I'll be going to Duchesne and do some work on this video again. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I have making it, and I could say have a good night. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. The purpose of this video right here is I wanted to give a little bit of background on Antonio Espejo. He was born in Spain. Can't remember the year, but he migrated or moved to Mexico in 1571. Some people say that he was part of the Inquisition of some team somehow, but we don't know for sure. In 1580, he was starting to become really wealthy. He might have been wealthy to start with before he came over, but at least in Mexico there, in about 1580, he was very wealthy. In November of 1582, that's when he left to explore New Mexico. Now, New Mexico at the time, you got to realize, incorporated California, Nevada, possibly up into Oregon, through Utah. Not sure if it went as far as Colorado or not, but then it came down. So that whole area above, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico. I'm not sure about in Texas, but that was all considered New Mexico. So he's one of the people in the expeditions of 1582 to 1583 was given credit for exploring New Mexico. Now, lots of things happened between that time, the 1580 and 82, before he left. I know that, let's see, in 1575, his daughter became legitimate and therefore became his heir. I'm not sure if that meant that she was a little illegitimate to start with, or they just had to pay to make her his heir. But then, say, 1575, his daughter became legitimate. What's important about that is that she married Pedro Gonzalez de Mendoza, which became Antonio's son-in-law, and he was able to, and I'll tell you about what he did in a minute. So, in 1581, this is the year before he left on his expedition, he was preparing for a cattle drive to take his cattle to the valley of San Francisco to sell them. Okay, and one of the people that was working for him, one of his ranch hands, said he was sick and could not go. And his name was Sebastian Lopez. when he found out that Sebastian really was not sick, he got kind of pissed off at him. He threatened to kill him, and he says, "I'm going to kill you just like I killed this other guy, Andres Vasquez, who happened to be an Indian in this other area." And 4 of the ranch hands got kind of scared because they got threatened that they're going to get killed for going on this, if they didn't shape up and go do what he asked. And so the 4 of them, first of all, went over to this village and found out that the story was true, that Antonio had killed this Indian, and so they were afraid for their life. So they took off, the 4 of them: Sebastian Lopez, Alonso Hernandez, Marcos Ramos, and Diego Ramirez. Alonso and Marcos were brothers-in-law. They had married sisters, or so their wives were sisters. And so when they took off, and Sebastian Lopez and Diego Ramirez went to a different, I think I called it a hacienda or a estancia to hide, and the other 2 happened to be at one of Antonio's, where he lived. They were staying there, so they went to one of Antonio's places where he lived to get their wives and get out of there. But as soon as they got there, Antonio showed up, and he was kind of pissed that they were there because they were, basically not going on the cattle drive. And immediately someone shot and hit Marcos in the head, blew a hole in his head, and he died instantly. Hernandez got shot in the hand, and imagine was begging for his life. And so Antonio bound him up. Him and his brother Pedro bound Hernandez up, and forced him to basically find the other 2. Where did they go? So they marched him all the way to this other ranch house, and they looked and looked and they couldn't find him. About this time, I'm thinking Antonio was getting kind of like, oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't have shot the guy. But he told Hernandez if he would go and talk to Marcos's wife, he would give him give her 100 pesos for keeping her mouth shut and not mention that he killed her husband. Well, that didn't fly. So they went and they went to the authorities and told on Antonio and Pedro. Well, during the trials, this was before they left on their expedition north to discover New Mexico. During their trial, it was said that Peso did both shootings, although Hernandez said that Antonio is the one that killed Marcos. And you think about it, the guns back in those days, they weren't repeaters. Unless he had 2 guns ready to go, I tend to believe that Hernandez was telling the truth, that probably Antonio got a shot off and killed Marcos, and probably Pedro's brother shot Hernandez in the hand. In either case, Hernandez, he was sentenced to not being able to be in Mexico City area. He had to not come there for 10 years. He had to do 5 years in jail, and he had to give up half his wealth. Antonio, on the other hand, did not hang around to be sentenced. He took off, what they call it, to the frontier, and he was out. I guess that was a common thing to do, is to go out into the frontier, if you didn't want to be sentenced. In either case, Antonio was sensed that he should be given half his wealth up. As far as I know, that he was being charged for. I mean, with all the things he charged for, he's being charged for being an accomplice to his brother Pedro shooting both Hernandez and Marcos. So during that time, Antonio hears that there's this expedition head up through New Mexico, because there was a previous expedition years earlier in which two friars were, or men of the cloth, two friars went up, and they didn't. And when they came back, they didn't come back. They stayed there, but it was rumored that the Indians had killed them, and so I can't remember this guy's name, but he wanted to go head up an expedition. Let me figure his name. I guess it doesn't matter. But this other friar wanted to go up there and verify that the Indians had or had not killed them. If not, it'd be a rescue mission, or it was just a verification that these two friars had died. And I think, okay, yeah, the two names of the people were Agustin Rodriguez and Francisco Lopez were the two friars that were up there. Anyway, so Antonio immediately says, "Hey, I'll pay to go up there," and so he hires like 18 soldiers and 150 mules and all the supplies they needed to go up there, and he's like supplying this expedition to go up north. Some people say that was to get out of his sentencing, and some people say it was for a bigger cause that Antonio has been. All along, Antonio's been writing the king saying, "Hey, I want to go up north in expedition," but whether or not we got a reply from the king or not, we know that he never had been giving permission up to that point to go up to the northern country to explore New Mexico. So this gave Antonio his chance to get up there. So Antonio heads up. Many things happen, and we'll talk about that in the video coming up. They eventually arrive to where the friars are. They find out that they are dead. The priest that's with them now wants to immediately go back, but Antonio says, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm going to go exploring to the west." And so he goes, and he comes back, and then he goes again. In the meantime, that priest leaves and goes back to Mexico, and Antonio meets nice Indians and also hostile Indians, and at one time Antonio burns out some of the places, and you hear the people dying inside, being burned to death. But he gets back to Mexico as well, and immediately his murder sentence, or his accomplice being a murderer, is enacted on him, and he's taken, half his wealth is taken from him. Now his son-in-law now is in a place of high political visibility, and his son petitions to have Antonio's wealth given back to him, and then he's cleared of all charges. Now, the interesting thing is that next thing we find out is that Antonio dies in Cuba in 1585. At least that's what it said. However, we have a map that was taken from some dead Spaniards around the Four Corners area, about we're guessing 1588, because the map has Antonio's signature on it, Antonio Espejo. Friend, he said the map is from 1584 to 1588, so he can't be killed in two different places. And so that's what makes it so interesting, is that where did this map come from if he's already dead and we have a signature from a dead guy? So we believe that Antonio did not die in 1585 in Cuba, but he probably died in 1588 by the hands of Indians around the Four Corners area. And that's your background. It has a really long background. So I'll let you listen to the commentaries that we have with Dan and Dale, and I hope that you enjoy this video and you can get back to the video. So we have Antonio coming from Spain to Mexico in 1571.
Yes.
Supposedly part of the Inquisition.
Well, in the history that is wrote about him, there's no mention of him becoming a soldier of fortune or anything like that. The only place I've ever read that is a suggestion, and it was written by, one of the academics or one of the so-called experts that was writing about his life. The same people that said he died in Cuba.
I guess after he came here, became wealthy because he was a cattle rancher?
I think he had a lot of money when he came here, and cattle seemed to be the best thing to get him to where he could fund a exploration into the North Country. You got to watch for interjections by the people who are writing about him, rather than sticking to what's actually been written.
Right.
I mean, you go to Wiki and there's an excellent example. Everything you read about it is written in the last 5 to 10 years. And you go pick his book up and you'll find out all his information comes from a book that was written 5-10 years before him. Very few of them actually reference the original material that is available. And even the original material that's available, you have to watch it, because you're not actually reading a direct translation. You're reading what the translator thought that he believed, or whatever he wanted you to think he believes. You have to watch what you're reading. If I recall, the other day I was reading in there where they mentioned that he went into Western. See, I thought I was reading his actual words, and it said that he went into Western Arizona. Well, this is 1582 we're talking here. There was no Arizona. In fact, the word Arizona didn't exist until 1700s. So that was my first clue that I'm not actually reading word for word translation.
You're reading author's suggestions.
Yeah, like every time he took off reading through the whole thing, and I know you notice this, they lead you to believe without explanation that he went to New Mexico.
Right.
Now, the New Mexico they're talking about is the established boundaries of today's New Mexico. And in those days, New Mexico included all of Utah, if not up into Idaho, Nevada, halfway
The
through
40th
California,
parallel.
Texas.
The Fort.
It-
That was New Mexico.
That was Spanish territory.
Yeah.
You said I went up to the 40th parallel.
Yep.
And what gets me is others will pick that same document up and read it, and they'll never even question that. Well, he never went any further than New Mexico. And the first thing I want to say is, what do you think New Mexico was in those days? The same established boundaries that we have today? This was New Mexico.
So, according to the stories, supposing he couldn't get the king's permission, otherwise he would have went by himself. According to the story, there's 2 friars that were left that stayed in a previous expedition up north and were rumored to be killed, and so they were going to send a rescue party up to save these 2 friars from death, and these 2 friars were Francisco Lopez and Augustine Rodriguez.
Yeah, and you notice no sooner than they find out that they had been killed, their mission was complete. But Espejo and who was the other guy? If you say it, I'll know it.
Well, the Espejo, for the most part, was against. Once they knew they died, the friar that was in charge of that.
He was ready to go back.
He was ready to go back, but he didn't want to go back by himself, and because Antonio talked the big group of them to stay in and going.
Beltran.
Yes. This
was the other guy.
To actually go explore more west.
Yes, they said west.
Yes.
And now, if they were where the academics places them, down in the Zuni area, and if you go west for a substantial distance, what are you going to run into?
Where are you at?
I'll give you a hint. It's a big hole in the ground.
The Grand Canyon.
Exactly. Was there any mention of the Grand Canyon?
No, there wasn't. So it was either way south or way north.
He didn't go west. He went north looking for, and this is in the document, he went north looking for the Lake of Gold.
Right.
Now, why they called it the Lake of Gold, I don't know. I suspect it comes from possibly a name that they gave the lake in the Roman days, because the English translation was Lake of Gold. But what word were they translating that from? I don't know.
Don't know.
So I don't get hung up on that, okay? But I know he went north, because when he came back that second time, after receiving all those furs from the can't remember the name of the Indians.
Zuni.
No.
No. Pueblo.
No, the Moki Indians. The Moki Indians.
The Mokies?
Yeah, Moki Caves. Same name. Anyway, but after that, he gathered up 9 men, and they went north in search of the Lake of Gold.
That was...
To search for a mine that he had heard of.
Right. Which, okay, so we need to stop for a second. Some people thought the only reason he went on his adventure because he was convicted of murder. Him and his brother.
Well, he wasn't convicted, he was suspected.
Well, no,
he was later cleared, from what I understand.
He was later cleared, but okay, so back in 1575, he had his daughter he paid to have his daughter become legitimate to him. But then she married the Pedro Gonzalez de Mendoza, I can't, it's Mendoza, Mendoza,
Mendoza, yeah.
and he was his son-in-law. He's the one that actually got him freed or cleared. But both Pedro and Antonio, his brother, they were brothers, were convicted of murder. They
Charged with murder.
yeah, well, they convicted Pedro.
Oh,
They convicted Pedro because even though the one guy that watched the murder that got shot in the hand, Hernandez, he claimed that Antonio shot the guy in the head. Yeah, but during the court, it said that Pedro did both of them. So Pedro had to give up half his earnings or half his wealth, and then he couldn't go to the main city of Mexico for 10 years, and he was sentenced to 5 years into the, I guess, a jail or whatever you want to call it. Antonio was convicted of being like accomplice, but his punishment was half his wealth, but he, and I'm not sure what else happened, but he was convicted, and since he was convicted, they said it was common for people that didn't want to pay to stay out in the frontier and not be in, so they couldn't catch him or make him pay. So they said that he went on this expedition to avoid that payment of his conviction. Now, when he came back off his little discovering New Mexico, said that he was immediately his fines were enacted on him, meaning they took away his stuff. But his son-in-law was able to free him or get that overturned. At least that's what it says.
now I think Espejo knew damn well why he came to the Americas. Now, there are other possibilities. That's on, right?
It is.
Okay.
It should be.
There are other possibilities as to how this all came about. One of the first things he did as employment when he came here, I can't remember what the word is that they attribute to it, but it's somewhat like
Bounty hunter? No.
yeah, somewhat like a bounty hunter, but not a bounty hunter. Whenever somebody was charged with something, they would send him out to bring them in
Kind of like
so
the
that they could
Pinkertons.
stand trial. They'd confiscate their assets and that kind of thing. Now, there is a possibility that he come across that map and possibly other documentation when he arrested someone and took that for himself. There's also the possibility that
Or at least the location, because he supposedly did the map from 1584 to 1588.
right, in other words, the map itself looks pretty much like he's the one that drew it.
Right.
But did it come from previous information handed down through his family?
More than likely, yes.
Possibly.
Cause, well,
One of the
here
reasons,
we got 4 years of him creating this map, right?
yeah,
So he could have done it all himself, but the thing is how did he get there? I mean, or when did he get there? If he was supposedly died in Cuba at
right, and I just kind of shoved that aside because I know it's not true. Simply because I have his signature, or what we're fairly certain is his signature in 1588.
right.
So obviously somebody was playing the guessing game in the academics.
But we've also speculated that if he wasn't getting permission from the king to go establish himself northward, that maybe he faked his own death in Cuba, and then he was able to go up there and be not bothered by the whole thing.
You have to admit that that is a possibility, but he would have had to have set that up fairly early the year before, because on his map it says 1584 to 88. So I suppose it's possible he could have set it up and had someone go to Cuba, and I don't know how they would have done that, but everything that I can see about this points to the fact that someone had been there before him, and he was following up on it. One of the things that causes me to believe that is, come on, there's 13 mine sites on that map. 3 presumed armor cache sites, 3 of them, and 2 vaults. Now, I guess if he had 200 guys working under him, they might have been able to manage 13 mines, 3 armor cache sites, and 2 vaults. Maybe.
Maybe.
But to me, it's a stretch.
They already had to
I know it would take a whole lot more people than that. So that's where I believe that he came here with prior information.
It was common during that time to enslave the Indians to work those mines too, though.
Yes, but something tells me that Espejo didn't do that.
I don't think so, because it was also known that it was more profitable to sell them to other Indians.
Yeah, see, honestly, we don't know what else was going on, but the more you add to his honeydew list of things that he was doing, just takes away from somebody who barely had enough time, and I still don't think there was enough time to open up 13 mines.
No, I agree.
I can't see that. We found, what, 3 of them so far? Oh, no, we found 2. We think we found the 3rd one. We're going to dig it out this year. And we're going to go after a 4th one. And then we're going to go investigate a trail that just makes no sense. It appears to be a cart trail. It's running up a canyon. Up above, there isn't anything up there. We have an individual who has spent an awful lot of time up there on horses over the years. And he says, there's just nothing up there. He says, why is this cart trail going up this little canyon? And so we want to go follow that out, because one of the vault locations, according to the maps, appears to be the target that this cart trail was going to.
Yeah.
But you're looking at a little over 400 years of erosion, everything.
Right.
In the hills.
Now, whenever you get out into an open area, you notice those trails kind of disappear.
Oh, yeah.
Going up and over a pass, there's still some of it there. I think.
Exactly.
No, you weren't up there, but I showed it to him today. I mean, he's standing there looking at what you know is a 440-year-old trail. When it gets into the trees or going up a draw, they seem to be protected. Another thing that happens at times is if those trails are deep enough, they'll be preserved because of the moisture, the rains and so forth. They turn into like a little ditch.
Well, also, when you create a trail like that for a cart or something, the wildlife is going to use it to continue over all the years, the 400 years.
That's why I like to try.
It's the easiest course.
Yeah, that's why I like to try and follow the trail to a certain degree and look for one of those places where they clean the rocks out of the trail and stack them on the side.
Yeah.
To me, that's a dead giveaway, like the one in Farm Creek that we never knew was there until the fire went through. But yet now, on Google Earth, you could see that trail plain as day, and it's heading up towards Snake John Spring from the smelters.
Well, I know I've read about Snake John Spring somewhere. The Utes used to have a Sundance there in that area, right there at, or close to Snake John Springs.
What was the purpose of the Sundance?
Now you're going to test me. I just read about it.
Well, don't worry, because if you don't have the answer now, I know you will by the end of the day.
I was reading about the Sioux Indians. You had me going on Custer.
See,
That
yeah.
from last week, and
Are you talking about the Gatling gun on the mule?
They weren't there. I'll just leave it at that.
But if we can find out what the main purpose was for the Sundance, it may shed some light. You know, there had to be a reason why they were doing it there.
Well, they do it there. They also do it down below White Rocks. They got a Sundance ground. And I know that they do the bear dance over at the big powwow over there at Fort Duchesne.
I know who might know the answers to those questions. Cody.
I'd ask, is Brian.
Who?
Isn't Brian his dad?
Yeah, no, Brian
Paul's
is his
brother?
uncle.
Uncle.
Or no, cousin.
Okay.
But, well, like over in Iron Mine Creek, that site that we won't elaborate any more on, why were they having these ceremonies or whatever they're having there? We know it was a battle site.
I still want to figure it out because.
But what kind of dance were they doing up there? Was it a Sundance?
Were they dancing, or was it that type of a ceremony?
I don't know.
It would, I'd like to talk to that guy that ran into them up there and see what time of year they were up there.
Another thing, you notice on the map that you have that long straight trail that goes all the way over from one vault to the next, okay? And on the map it's shown straight, but you know as well as I do that that trail isn't straight. It follows the contour, but it is the trail. And that trail is actually still very visible, but it's because it's still being used even today. But that's an example of how an old trail becomes a newer trail, and I've got it marked now from one end to the other. And we saw a small part of it today. Just pulled over, got out, and I said, there's the trail. And we walked down it a little ways. There's nothing else that could have created it. It's not a drainage. I mean, it's in a saddle,
Yeah.
you know? And it doesn't run down the bottom of the saddle, it runs off to the side.
We were talking about how can he open up 13 mines. The thing is that you're alluding to the fact that he probably had this map or something before he went to up there. So where did he get this map from?
Okay, I think that the map that we've now got a copy of was his own creation. I believe that the map that he had prior to coming here, or that I suspect that he had, I don't think it had 13 mines on it. It might have had 11, it might have had 12, but I think he's added some things to it, and he made his own creation of the map. And there's things that occurred in the translated documents and things that were said, a lot of different things, that leads me to believe that he had foreknowledge of this place before he ever came. Such as when he found out that this expedition to go up and check on these two priests, I mean, he was like, you know, we know he was writing letters, he was trying to get permission. Well, why was he trying to get permission to go into the northern parts of New Mexico?
It wasn't to convert people.
No. I don't
Well,
think he could have gave a rat's ass about converting people.
This would have been at just after Cortez looking for
40 years, if I remember right.
It was 40.
No, not Cortez.
It's
Coronado.
Coronado.
Yeah,
Right,
about 40 years after
Yeah,
Coronado.
he came in the
Was he
1740s.
looking for the same thing Coronado was looking for?
Coronado has the same indications throughout his exploration documents, and I have to say now, because of the obvious things that I found in those documents, assuming that I'm reading an accurate document, I find the same inconsistencies. Coronado and his men are marching along and say, hey, we found some Castilian grapes. Oh, and over here we found some Castilian flax. And here we found Castilian walnuts. Why? Did they mean walnuts like Castilian or Castilian walnuts? And if they did, then when did the Castilians plant those trees? See, that tells me that they were looking for signs of a previous occupation.
Well, Coronado was looking for the homeland of the Aztecs, correct? Looking for
Yes,
the
and
7 cities.
yes and no, okay? If they were looking specifically for the homelands of the Aztec, my first question would be, why? What did they know about the Aztecs? Because most of the documentation of the Aztecs didn't come about until the late 1500s, when it was written by Diego Duran, and the other one, the two best ones I've ever read, was Tezozomoc, who was the grandson of Montezuma II. So how
What year was this?
This is in like 1596.
I wonder what that year, that book Don's got.
What's it
Conquest of
called?
Mexico was written.
It's what?
The Conquest of Mexico.
If it's the one that was written by Bernal, can't remember the rest of his name, then that one, I'm not sure when that was written. That's actually a damn good book also.
That's the one Don has. I'm wondering what
Now-
the date was there
Ooh.
and whether that's what
Now, in
got
order,
him up into the basin is looking for the same thing.
well, in order to give more credibility to this potential previous expeditions by earlier cultures, in Bernal's, or not Bernal, yes, it's Bernal's record. He was the right-hand man of Cortez, and he was the one responsible for writing the story. There was a section in there, and I'm going to have to paraphrase because I don't remember it word for word, but when Cortez was trying to explain to him that their emperor, their king, had sent them, he said, we've always known about your king, and we've always known that we are descendants from your king. But when he left, he told us he'd be back, and no one came back, and so we married into the tribes, and we now have families, and we have no interest in your king any longer. You know, we disavow him. So who are these people that the Aztecs are talking about that they came from, knowing that they came from the people that Cortez came from? We know there's too much evidence that shows that earlier cultures had been here, long before Espejo. How about the Tucson lead crosses? And a lot of people will say, oh, those are controversial. Well, no, they're only controversial to people who can't ignore, who enjoy ignoring the facts. I mean, if all you're going to do is take the Tucson lead crosses and focus upon all the negative bullshit that's been written about them, then that's all you're ever going to know. How about looking at both sides of the coin? Let's read up on all the positive things, such as the archaeologist that was there when they were dug up. It was very obvious and clear to him that this was an authentic find. And in the writings that are on those artifacts, it makes it very clear that one wave of Romans came here in 775, and they were probably here till about 1050 AD. It talks of an earlier time when they came here in 100 BC and ended up leaving here again because of war and so forth in 400 AD, a date which matches with the British history of the fall of the Western Roman Empire. What exactly is this Western Roman Empire? It sure as hell wasn't France and Spain. This is the Western Roman Empire.
You're way too far back in history.
But I'm trying to give credibility to Espejo.
I am trying to, what I'm trying to get at, with Coronado, could he be trying to come a different way? Because they always said the home of the Aztecs in Lake, what they call it, they're Utah and Salt Lake, and trying to get to that area as the ancient home of the Aztecs.
Right.
With the herring, birds, and
Okay. Now,
all that.
Now you've seen the old maps, and the academics like to say, oh, well, they made mistakes, you know, like the map that shows California as an island. Oh, that was a mistake. They thought that it was an island. Well, guess what? Not only did they think it was an island, it was an island, and the geologists today will validate that. California was an island, but this was 2,000 years ago. So you get why I keep going back? Now, what about the maps that show Lake Kapala? This is a 30,000-year-old lake, according to the academics, but it had 7 cities around it. Are those also 30,000 years old? Or is somebody a little screwed up in their radiocarbon dating?
Well,
That's what the Aztecs came from, is those 7 cities.
well, I'm wondering now if that ain't what actually, and I know there's no documents or, you know, any written history on it, but could that have been what Escalante actually come up and marched right into the Uinta Basin for looking for the same stuff?
You know why I think Escalante came up here? I think he was sent by the king to look for illegal mining operations. Because Escalante was following a very old trail.
He was, and he knew they had maps and were.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he'd never
and he
been to the
comes
archives.
Right into the Uinta Basin.
When did Escalante come through?
What's that?
What years did Escalante come through?
1776 is probably. You're looking. That was probably when the expedition ended, right? So he'd have been here
Yeah.
75, 76.
And I think there was one other, but I can't think of his name.
Riviera come before Escalante.
Well, if you say it, I'll know it. It starts with an A. Was Riviera part of the Ponce de Leon thing when they came up from Florida?
No.
I think that was before Coronado. I can't remember.
It was.
Alvarez something or other. I think he came after Coronado. I think Coronado was the first one. But here's another thing that puzzles me.
What?
Down in Mexico, okay, in Sonora and Zacatecas, if I said it right, and down in those areas, Nayarit, Durango, Chihuahua. I've never seen a record where somebody had to get a license down in those areas. How come? I'm not saying they don't exist, I've just never seen them.
Meaning, why is the record of Antonio saying that he couldn't go up there?
My point is, what's different about down in Mexico in those days? What was it they were trying to keep control of up north? And to me, it's previous knowledge of a place that they were trying to find and get back to from the past. In other words, this area here in the Uinta Mountains has been a target for thousands of years.
And it's always been considered a no man's land. There's
Considered
Right.
what?
a no man's land
Yeah,
by the Indians.
I think it was a highly protected,
There's
Land,
a list
even
of
by Spain.
expeditions.
say what?
List of
Spanish expeditions.
Oh. Did you just pull this out of your backside or what?
Pretty much.
Okay. Hernando Cortez, if this is the case, okay, Christopher Columbus, we can't include him because he didn't even get up here.
They have
This other next guy that I can't pronounce, Juan de Grijalva, apparently just got to the coast of Mexico. Now, Hernando Cortez, we know about his conquest of Mexico, but he didn't venture off on any expeditions in the north. Here's the guy I'm thinking of, Fray Marcos de Niza.
I knew that. I read it somewhere.
Now,
Well, I'm just curious because when Antonio went up there, they encountered Indians that spoke Spanish because of Cortez had gone through there before and taught them.
okay, so if you go to Coronado, who's the one I thought was the first to come up here after Cortez invaded Mexico, apparently he wasn't. Here's a guy, Melchior Diaz, who supposedly made it up into the area of the Gila River in Arizona. Keep in mind the Gila River goes well over into today's New Mexico also. Friar de Niza, this says he went into the Pima villages and Cibola, okay?
So that's
That'd be
No.
northern New Mexico.
Well,
Cibola.
no, actually Cibola is Utah. See, they had different names for different areas. They had Quiveras, Cibola. It's kind of like our cities versus our counties versus our states. But I haven't figured out what Cibola, I think, was bigger than what we would call a county, but probably an equivalent size to what we would refer to as a state.
So they did it on, what's that movie with Nicolas Cage, his second one? Because they had them looking at Cibola up in North Dakota.
Oh yeah. Good point. I had a good laugh over that one.
I could be wrong. I said Cortez that taught him. It could have been Coronado.
Okay, now here they have Antonio de Espejo as being 1580. And it was
They
actually
also have them in
1582.
New Mexico and Colorado.
Yeah. There's a lot of French coming into Colorado also. But
Well, the French were a different animal. coming
anyway,
from the
did I
north.
take you way off track again?
Yeah. That's the way it is here.
We were just trying to get back to Antonio. Where did he get the map? If he wasn't the one that
The one that we have a copy of.
right.
I think he drew it. I think
Okay.
that's his
But
creation.
he had previous knowledge of where some of the mines were to start with.
Say again?
But he had previous knowledge of where some of these mines would start with. Otherwise,
I believe that
he couldn't have done
just
it.
based upon all the foregoing information. I think he knew about
And he
it.
probably had trails also to follow
Yes.
that were there. That's how he discovered probably some of the ones that he wasn't there. The trails were left by possibly the Romans? Or is that way earlier?
I think it might be a little bit early
So
now,
who
but I believe some of those trails would have still been here because to him it would have only been, well, it would have been close to 500 years. But I think I stood you on top of a 440-year-old trail today.
Right.
But
But I didn't have a motorcycle to ruin
After-
it either, though.
after the Romans, I have reason to believe, and it's mostly because of the Tucson lead crosses, that you had the Welsh came in here, not Maddock. Everybody gets hung up on Prince Maddock. Okay, I'm not sure what Maddock did. I'm pretty sure he came here, but I don't think he ever made it to where he was supposed to be going. He got hung up somewhere back in Georgia. But there were other Welsh who came. There was Portuguese. I'm sure the Scots made it in here, and possibly even Knights Templars, which could be your Portuguese.
Yeah.
Now everybody wants to talk about Vikings. There was no such thing as a Viking, okay? The Viking would have been your Welsh, your Scottish, your Norse people, and if they want to call them Vikings, I guess that's okay. What the hell is that noise?
I don't know.
The clock.
Oh.
It's 3 o'clock.
Don't let it do that again.
In 1 hour. It won't be a now, though.
It sounded ill.
Okay, so now let's wrap up to the end of his life. There's a rumor that, or they say that he died in Cuba in 1585. However, we have a map and signature that has him here in 1584 to 1588. Okay, so let's say that he was here and he did the map. How did we get the map? Where did he lose it?
Okay. I'm pretty sure that because of the fact that he wrote 1584 to 1588, they were on their way back. Okay? I don't know if they were loaded. I don't know if they got their butts kicked. But somebody was on their way back down to Mexico. Okay? According to the Indian that gave this map, a copy of this map to Steve, was that these maps, he had 4 maps. One of them was the Espiritu Santos, okay? The Espejo map. These maps came from my grandfathers that they took from the dead Spaniards they killed long ago in the Four Corners area.
So he could have met his demise there in the Four Corners area.
Say again?
Antonio could have died in the Four Corners area.
That's what I would tend to believe, is that he was killed. Unless he miraculously escaped and made it down to Mexico, but...
He would never give up his map.
But you never heard anything more about Espejo.
Right.
You'd think you'd hear something, unless he assumed a different name and went into hiding. But how did the Indians get the map? And I think it's because they killed him. So
we don't. So it has to be after the 1588, or that
or
same
during,
year, or that same year,
or during. Could have been in the fall. It just depends on when they left. But I mean, even Daryl will tell you that map, even though you can tell it's not accurate.
It's one of the more
It's pretty damn good.
maps that I've seen.
He did a very good job of capturing the curves and various details in the rivers. He didn't draw ridges. He didn't draw any mountains. It's mostly the drainages.
Yeah, when you're, you know, for what they had to work with was just sight. Looking at the mountains to draw the map. They had to be up there to draw it.
Yeah.
And he did fairly accurate drawing of it.
Well, you notice when I took it from the actual map and turned it into a 30-minute map edition, it's as if it was shrunk and tilted.
Well, I believe
And
maps
to me,
do
that's
that,
understandable.
Depending on the material it's drawn on, as
Yeah.
it dries up,
Good
could
point.
distort certain areas of the map. You know, just shrinking up a little bit might throw you off
Yeah.
a lot.
But that's why I think it was so important that he captured all the details that he did. I mean, like was
Like
that,
the lake area
yeah.
with the ponds up
I
up
had
there.
I had one person say, "Well, uh, how come it's on the map?" Well, because before it became a reservoir, it was still a lake,
It was a very small lake. It was a lake
Yeah.
though.
but it matches what's on the Espejo map.
Yeah.
And it could have
The-
been
the
it could have
spot.
been smaller or larger in his day. We don't know.
Well, it was just,
Let's put it
it
this
was a
way.
water hole of
It
some
wasn't a
sort.
puddle.
Yeah. Huh?
Okay. It wasn't a puddle.
No, it was larger than a puddle.
Yeah.
It was, it's like Bomb Lake up there in Rock Creek. You go there in the summertime and sometimes it's a puddle, sometimes it's full. But
Well-
it's been there forever. It's not man-made.
I can't remember what date they actually built a dam to make it bigger, but I found the recon photos prior to that, and it was a significantly,
So did I. Because
you know,
I asked myself the same question.
yeah, you could see it on the, those images were taken from what? 35,000 feet?
Yeah, I think it was, the reservoir was, well, every lake in the UN is damn near, they've put a dam on to increase the water storage. You know. All of Brown Duck Basin is, but you still had the lake before that.
Yeah, like Moon Lake.
The last question is kind of along the same thing you're thinking of is why did the Indians, kill this group of Spaniards down at the Four Corners area if they were just not, were they enslaving some Indians to drive a lot of this stuff, or why would the Indians care about them if they were by themselves?
Why would they kill them?
Yeah.
Because they're white.
Okay.
Okay.
Kill who?
There's one thing the Indians have always said. They've been running white man out of here for thousands of years, or hundreds of years.
So this guy the Indian that had the map, his ancestors they just killed them.
They're on their land,
Okay.
and they already had a pretty good idea of what the European people have done in the past, such as in the Roman days. And the ones that would know that best would have been the Apache.
But just years earlier, when Antonio came up there in the 1581, 82, during his expedition, he met lots of Indians that were friendly to him. They
Yeah,
gave him all
there's
the
some.
wool, they gave him the blankets and all this stuff. But some of them weren't. Antonio did some pretty bad stuff on the way back, burning out villages and stuff. But
Well, it was like, I think it was Friar de Niza. When he came up, he came to a group of Indians that was somewhere, as I recall, I would say somewhere close to Kanab, Utah. And those Indians came running out to greet him, calling him Hagata.
Hagatha?
And the Spanish, the guy that was writing this down, said we gathered that this word Hagata meant a man come from heaven or something like that. You know, they didn't know what it meant because all they had was sign language,
Yeah.
but that's what they assumed. And I know that you
Yeah.
picked up on Hagata
The guy that built the
or
boats.
Hagath.
Guy that built the boats.
Huh?
The guy that built the boats and left the
How rare is that name? Well, the Indians called him Hagata. That's the way they wrote it. But we can pretty much presume that this may have came from the same event of Haggath.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. We'll talk about it another time.
We'll talk
I'm
about
cutting
that
this all
later.
out. So I think if we want to finish this Antonio Espejo, if I said it right.
Well, there's so much more we could talk about, but I think you covered the gist of it.
Yeah, because you know
Hopefully we're going to find some new things this year.
which would be nice. Then we could do maybe a fix it on it if we find something different.
The only thing I'm really trying to protect as far as the Espejo story is where it's actually located. I mean, yeah, we've mentioned a thing here and there, but if you haven't got the map and you don't know what you're looking at,
No one's gonna find it.
I think I'm pretty damn good, okay?
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about if
at,
someone's listening to this isn't gonna
At
find
taking an old map and figuring out where it is. But when I can't do it, that's who I send it to. And when he sent it back, you know, so quickly, I had my doubts. But I went and
Still have
started,
them emails.
but I went and started checking little details, and they match perfectly. There's no question that he found the actual location. None whatsoever. In fact, we're in the process of proving it now.
Right.
We found 2 of the mines. We think we found the 3rd one. There's other things on that map that we already know about. It's pretty clear we've got the right spot.
It has to be that area.
It can't be anywhere else.
No.
It certainly isn't where that one guy said.
Oh, there was back then. Hell, I looked at that map and knew it was right off the bat. And
which we will
I
just
think it was
delete.
Doug Croft and JB over in La Pointe. We were
Yeah.
discussing the map, and I kept telling him, no, that's and whatnot. That's when I wiped all the new stuff that was added off of it,
Yeah.
and then sent it to them. And no,
His first response, I sat down and I spent some time with it, and I thought, you know, this has to be this particular river system. But I was about 1 river drainage off, I think it
you were
was.
a whole bunch. 'Cause
Oh,
I
shut
still
up.
got
And I
he
said,
was like Bill Baskin.
and I
Bill
said,
Baskin
tell me what
had
you think. And he
bare
said,
wallow
nope.
on there. And they had it over the whole Uena, which it ain't. It's just in between Uena River. And
no,
White Rocks.
I had the Uena River on it and White Rocks, but I think I was 1 drainage system shifted over.
I really can't. I'll have to look at the email again and see where you
Let
are.
me
I
just
remember
put it out
that
there.
day-
He's getting old.
The day was, I got home from work and he had that email on there, and he just asked me, "Do you agree with this?" And I looked it over and
He said, nope.
nope. Replied to his email.
Of course,
"Nope."
of course that leads to a phone call.
Yeah.
No, not then. You
But he
you
ended up.
kind of like told me, "What the hell you mean, nope?"
No,
said,
I
"Just
did
a
not.
second."
I said, okay, show me what you think.
And the
Because I
email
knew damn
sent
well
you
that if
back,
anybody could
just-
get it right, he could.
I took it, I printed off a copy of it, and I wrote chords on everything, and then emailed that back to him. And then I didn't hear from him for about 45 minutes, and the phone rang. And I, huh?
No,
Why
he,
you say, I've already deciphered it 2 years, 3 years ago. You know, and there,
and he was right on the money. I mean, the first place I focused on was that. To me, that was so obvious,
yeah.
and that's when everything else fell into place. So,
Well, was one of them that caught my eye, and if you look at them two and set them on a regular map, everything just falls into
Yeah.
place.
We're on there.
The lake's up in the far corner.
Everything matters. So, you got to remember, he's 1 day older than me, so he's 1 day more feeble.
I just know that there's a lot that I need to delete off this.
Now, if you ever hear me talking about my best researcher in any of my articles, that's who I'm talking about.
Well, thanks for adding your 2 cents to this conversation, Dale.
Oh, for bullshit?
Well, actually, the more people talk about it, you think about different things. Like,
Well, you come up with different ideas. It's like, I've always wondered why Escalante fell into here just like that. That's what I was noticing, just glancing over them expedition dates. Did you notice that between 1540, the next expedition date's 25 years later? What happened in them?
Yeah, I thought it was 40 years later.
Huh?
I thought it was 40 years later.
No, it's from 1540 to 65. So it's,
who's 65?
oh, let me get my young guy glasses on, or eyes on here.
Dan always helps me with my interviews and.
Ibarra, Francisco de Ibarra,
Okay, what does it say off to the right?
land of the Utes.
Land of the Ute?
Holy crap.
What
To the
year?
land of the Utes, 1565.
Ooh, I gotta
And
go
then
read
you got
that one.
Antonio Espejo, or whatever his name is.
I gotta go read that one. I don't recall reading it. No, I meant the exploration documents.
But if you look at the expeditions coming in here,
Could he have got the map from them?
Huh?
Could he have got the map from them? Maybe they're the ones they
No. There's he was
about
quite a few years earlier.
every year they're up till 1540, and then you got like 4 expeditions coming in here, all at once. And then you got the 1560, and then next date's 1580 with the guy over in Creek. So that's probably the 65. That's probably where.
I don't remember reading this exploration document. I mean, this is not a list of those documents, but it will correlate with the 180 exploration documents. So I want to go look at Ibarra because I don't remember reading about him. I remember reading about Alvarez Nunez or whatever his name was.
I'd like to know what happened to him.
Cordoba, Friar de Niza. I read those. I've only read maybe a 1/10 of them.
The reason why his name, Ibarra, stuck out to me is because Juan Ibarra is Freddie Dodge's partner on the Gold Show. He lives in Nevada. That don't make no sense.